She said he was just being dramatic, but his spine had belt marks. My son begged me not to send him back. Then he lifted his shirt, and I stopped breathing. Angry welts, deep bruises, fingerprints. I dropped to my knees in a strip mall parking lot, holding in rage like a dam about to break. "Who did this?" I asked. His voice cracked. "Rick, Mom's boyfriend. She just watches." And that's when I realized. My ex didn't just ignore the abuse. She enabled it. Lied to the court, faked medical records, used child support to pay for beach resorts while my boy came home black and blue. But I'm not just a dad. I'm a project manager. I document everything. And Melissa had no idea. I was building a war chest. She tried to bury the truth. Now I'm going to bury her lies. Wait until you see what I filed next. My name is Michael Carver, and I'm 45 years old. Between my project, management job, and coaching Little League, I've built my life around being there for my son Ethan. The early morning coffee steam rises as I check his practice schedule pinned to the fridge, next to the mesh bag of dusty baseballs that's become a fixture by the door. My ex-wife Melissa keeps pushing boundaries, designer bags appearing from nowhere, veiled comments about money, and those cold smiles during custody exchanges that make my neck tense. But she doesn't know I've saved every email, documented every exchange, letting my coaching instincts track the score while appearing to play nice. My son's safety comes first, even though I've swallowed my concerns too often for the sake of peace. But let me start from the beginning. That Friday evening started like any other custody exchange. I pulled up to Melissa's new townhouse, the one she'd somehow managed to afford on her paralegal salary. You know the kind. All perfect landscaping and pristine sidewalks that make you wonder what's really going on behind those coordinated curtains. I noticed something was off the moment Ethan came through the front door. My boy, usually bouncing with 11-year-old energy, walked stiffly. He clutched his backpack against his chest like it was some kind of shield. The hair on my neck stood up. That same warning signal I'd been ignoring too long. "Hey, buddy," I called out, keeping my voice casual. "Ready for pizza and practice tomorrow?" Melissa stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. "He already ate. And don't let him convince you he needs new cleats. The ones I bought are fine." I nodded, playing along with the small talk while Ethan slid into the passenger seat. Something in his eyes made my stomach knot. You spend enough time coaching kids, you learn to read their faces like weather patterns. Once we cleared the development, Ethan's whisper cut through the AC hum. "Take me home, please, Dad." The tremor in his voice sent ice through my veins. I glanced over. He was still hugging that backpack, staring straight ahead. "Everything okay, bud?" I kept my tone light, but my knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I don't want to go back there." His voice cracked. I pulled into the nearest parking lot, some strip mall with a defunct video store. "Hey," I said softly, turning to face him. "You can tell me anything. You know that, right?" He nodded but wouldn't meet my eyes. "My back hurts." Those 3 words stopped my heart. "Can I take a look?" Another tiny nod. I guided him out of the car, into the fluorescent spill of the hallway light between stores. Carefully, trying to keep my hands steady, I lifted the back of his shirt. The bruises hit me like a physical blow. Purple-black marks scattered across his shoulders, some shaped like fingerprints, others in neat lines that could only come from a belt. Fresh ones layered over older yellow-green splotches. I had to remember to breathe. "Who did this, Ethan?" He shuddered. "Mom's boyfriend. When she's not home." His voice was barely audible. "She says I'm making it up." I wanted to punch something. Instead, I knelt down to his level, the way I do with scared players after a bad injury. "Listen to me, buddy. I believe you. And nothing else is going to happen without you knowing about it first, okay? You're not alone in this." He finally looked at me, eyes wet. "Promise?" "Coach's honor," I said, using our old safety phrase from his t-ball days. That got me a ghost of a smile. I took out my phone, hands shaking slightly, and photographed the bruises, made sure the timestamp feature was on, opened my notes app, and documented everything. Location, time, what Ethan had said. Years of project management had taught me the value of contemporaneous records. During the drive home, my mind raced through next steps. I'd need a lawyer, documentation, maybe a restraining order. But first, I had to confront Melissa, tonight, before she could spin this into another one of her stories about me being difficult. Ethan fell asleep on the couch watching baseball highlights, his breathing finally evening out. I tucked a blanket around him, careful of his shoulders, and stood there watching him for a long moment. The question kept pounding in my head with each heartbeat. Who the hell was this boyfriend? And how long had this been going on? After Ethan woke up from his nap, I made us both hot chocolate, the way we used to during those late-night thunderstorms when he was little. Some habits stick with you, you know? The familiar routine seemed to help, his shoulders relaxing just a fraction as he wrapped his hands around the warm mug. "Can you tell me what happened, buddy?" I kept my voice gentle, like I was talking to a spooked animal. He stared into his cocoa. "Rick, Mom's boyfriend. He says I need discipline." The words stumbled out of his mouth like it didn't belong there, like someone else's vocabulary forced between a kid's teeth. "Mom just looks at her phone when he gets mad. Says I should listen better." My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. How long has this been happening? Since he moved in? 2 months, maybe? Ethan's voice got smaller. "He uses his belt when Mom's not home. Says it'll make me respect him." Ever try to keep your face neutral when your whole world's burning down? I managed somehow, but my hands were shaking as I grabbed my keys. "We're going to take a little drive, okay? Nothing scary. Just need to have a doctor take a look." The urgent care clinic was quiet that time of night. The fluorescent lights made everything feel unreal, like we'd stepped into some parallel universe where these things actually happened to my son. The doctor, Thompson, according to her name tag, was exactly what we needed. Professional, thorough, and completely neutral. "I'll need to document these injuries," she said, photographing the bruises. "And I'm required to file a report." "Good," I said. "I want everything on record." She typed up her findings while I watched Ethan flip through an old magazine, trying to look brave. The printer hummed, spitting out official letterhead. I had her email me a copy too. Never trust a single version of anything important. Back home, I printed 3 copies of everything. Doctor's report, photos, my notes, one for my lawyer, one for the court, one locked in my fireproof safe. Maybe you think I'm paranoid, but 15 years in project management teaches you to back up your backups. Then came the call I'd been dreading. Melissa picked up on the 3rd ring. "What's your problem now, Michael?" Her voice dripped with that familiar condescension. "Ethan has bruises all over his back. Belt marks, Melissa." "Care to explain?" She laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, please. He's being dramatic again. You know how he gets. I have doctor's documentation. Because you're bitter and looking for anything to cause trouble." Her tone hardened. "Rick is helping discipline our son, which you clearly can't manage. Maybe if you weren't so soft." I hung up. Had to, before I said something that would come back to haunt me in court. First thing next morning, I called every family lawyer in I spread the custody agreement across my kitchen table that night, coffee going cold beside me. Every other weekend, spelled out in black and white, Melissa's time with Ethan started Friday after school. My stomach twisted as I checked the calendar. 3 days. Just 3 days until I'd have to hand him over again. You ever feel like you're caught in one of those old-school finger traps? The harder you pull, the tighter it gets. That's what this was. One wrong move, keeping Ethan home, confronting Rick directly, even pushing too hard with the school, and I could lose everything. Courts don't look kindly on parents who break custody orders, no matter the reason. "Think like a project manager," I muttered to myself, pulling out my laptop. "When things get complicated at work, you document everything. And I mean everything." I created a new folder on my external hard drive, Ethan, custody. Then I started building both digital and paper trails, organizing everything into clear categories. Medical records went first. The urgent care visit, photos, doctor's notes. School records next, including his latest progress reports showing behavioral changes. Then came the communication logs, every text, email, and recorded phone call with Melissa since the divorce. Speaking of texts, I needed to establish a paper trail about Ethan's care. I crafted a message to Melissa, reading it 3 times before sending. "Please keep me updated on Ethan's daily routine and any disciplinary actions during your custody time. As his father, I need to be informed of all decisions affecting his well-being." Her response pinged back almost immediately. "Your repeated inquiries constitute harassment. All communication should go through our lawyers per custody agreement. Section 4.3. I screenshot the exchange, making sure the timestamp was visible, and added it to both folders. Classic Melissa, turning every reasonable request into a threat. Next morning, I called Ethan's school nurse, Mrs. Rodriguez. "I'm reviewing some recent injury reports," I said, keeping my voice professional. "Has Ethan had any documented soccer incidents this semester?" "Soccer?" She sounded confused. "Ethan's not on any sports teams this year, Mr. Carver." My hand tightened on the phone, but I kept my tone neutral. "Could you email me confirmation of that? Just for my records." Of course. The email arrived while we were still talking. Another document for the folder. Another piece of evidence showing Melissa's lies. That night, lying in bed, all I could hear was time ticking away, though my bedroom didn't even have a clock. 3 days felt like nothing. 3 days until I had to watch Ethan walk into that house again. 3 days to figure out how to protect him without blowing up my chances in court. I got up before dawn, my decision made. No dramatic moves, no confrontations. Just steady, methodical documentation of everything. Build the case brick by brick until it was solid enough for a judge to see the truth. Pulling out my journal, I wrote the same sentence I'd been writing every few hours. Time is the predator now. The words stared back at me, stark and true. Because that's what it was. A race against time. Every minute Ethan spent in that house was another minute he could be hurt. But if I moved too fast, without enough proof, I could lose him completely. I added another tab to my binder. Timeline. Started filling in dates, incidents, conversations. The pattern was there. Clear as day, once you laid it all out. Now I just had to make the court see it too. Grabbing my coffee, I settled in at the kitchen table with my laptop. Time to start researching family court precedents. If I was going to fight this battle, I needed to know every rule, every procedure, every possible move Melissa might make. Because one thing was certain. She'd fight dirty, and I couldn't afford to lose. Ever notice how the truth feels heavy? I mean physically heavy. By the time I finished gathering everything into a 3-ring binder, the weight of what happened to my son nearly broke my back and my heart. Just write what happened, buddy, I'd told Ethan, handing him a composition book with baseball players on the cover. Like you're telling your best friend. Every night he'd fill another page with his careful 3rd-grade handwriting, documenting Rick's discipline sessions while Melissa scrolled through her phone. I won't lie to you, reading those entries made my hands shake. But Ethan's courage in writing them down, that steadied me. The medical records told their own story. Dr. Patterson's notes were clinical, but damning. Multiple contusions consistent with blunt force trauma. Patient reports adult male striking him with belt. No evidence of sports-related injury. The high-res photos I'd taken showed every mark in terrible detail, with timestamps that couldn't be disputed. Filing the motion to modify custody felt like lighting a fuse. I included everything. The photos, medical reports, Ethan's journal entries, school records showing behavior changes. Even added some character references from other Little League parents who'd noticed Ethan flinching when adults raised their voices. Remember that satisfaction you got as a kid? Turning in a perfect homework assignment? This was nothing like that. My hands were clammy as I handed the clerk my stack of exhibits. Then came Melissa's response. I should have known she'd try to flip the script. Petitioner demonstrates obsessive controlling behaviors, her counter-affidavit claimed. Subjects minor child to rigid schedules and excessive baseball drills, indicating unstable fixation on athletic performance. My coffee went cold as I read on. She'd twisted everything. My consistent bedtimes became militant scheduling. My batting practice sessions with Ethan turned into forced training regardless of child's exhaustion. Even my habit of keeping detailed calendars got painted as some kind of mental issue. But the real kicker? She claimed all Ethan's bruises came from soccer accidents. Had documentation too. Receipts from some urgent care clinic I'd never heard of. Dated 3 days before I'd first photographed the injuries. Something felt off about those receipts. Maybe it was all those years checking expense reports at work. But details jump out at you when you know what to look for. The clinic's address used Helvetica font, but their phone number was in Arial. The date stamp didn't quite line up with the rest of the text. I scanned everything at high resolution, circled the inconsistencies in red, and added comparison images showing standard medical documentation formats. Attached a note highlighting how the supposed urgent care visit predated injuries that hadn't even happened yet. Your Honor, I wrote in my rebuttal filing, I direct the court's attention to Exhibit C, demonstrating factual impossibilities in respondent's documentation. The clerk's office confirmed receipt within hours. At least the paperwork was moving fast. But watching that confirmation email pop up felt like standing on thin ice. Yeah, you're still above water. But one wrong step. My phone buzzed. Preliminary hearing scheduled. 2 weeks out. 14 days. I stared at those digits until they blurred. The thing about Melissa? She could charm anyone. Teachers, coaches, probably even judges, had this way of smiling that made you doubt your own memory of events. My stack of papers suddenly felt flimsy against her practice performance. I closed my eyes, remembering how she'd worked her magic during our marriage. How many times had I questioned my own sanity when she insisted something hadn't happened the way I remembered? Looking down at my binder of evidence, one question kept nagging. In a courtroom where perception often trumps reality, can documented truth outrun a well-told lie? You know that sinking feeling when you check your bank balance and the numbers don't match your memory? Try multiplying that by about 1,000, and you'll get close to how I felt after that preliminary hearing. I'd walked into the courthouse feeling prepared. 3 matching binders, tabs color-coded, every page numbered and indexed. Even had my lucky tie on, the one Ethan gave me last Father's Day with tiny baseballs printed on it. But preparation doesn't mean much when the other side's strategy is death by paperwork. Your Honor, Melissa's attorney drawled, we'll need extensive discovery regarding the alleged incidents. Medical records going back 3 years, all school communications, complete athletic participation history. The list went on and on, each item adding zeros to my legal bills. My lawyer's pencil scratched across his notepad. Tallying hours. I didn't need to see the math. I could feel my savings evaporating with every word. The judge granted their motion for continuance. Another month of waiting. Another round of filing fees. Ever notice how time moves slower when you're watching money disappear? Back home that night, I pulled up my financial spreadsheet. You'd think after 20 years in business, I'd be better prepared for this kind of drain. But watching those numbers tick down, I'll tell you, nothing prepares you for calculating the months until your account hits 0. 6 months. Maybe 7 if I cut everything non-essential. The mortgage wasn't negotiable, and Ethan's needs came first. But at this burn rate, the math was brutal. My cursor hovered over a new document. Settlement proposal. Just typing those words made my stomach turn. Maybe if I offered Melissa joint custody with supervised visitation. Strict guidelines about her boyfriend. Monthly check-ins. I deleted the whole thing before finishing the first paragraph. The shame hit harder than the fear. Remember when you were a kid and made a promise you knew you had to keep, no matter what? This felt like that, but with stakes higher than any childhood oath. Opening my evidence folder, I pulled up the photos again. Each bruise told its story. The belt marks across Ethan's shoulders, the finger-shaped prints on his arms. His voice echoed in my head. Dad, please don't make me go back. I opened a blank document and typed 3 letters. Dad. Below it, I wrote what I needed to hear. Hold. Just that one word. Printed it out and taped it to my monitor where I couldn't ignore it. But determination doesn't pay legal fees. And resolve isn't a strategy. I needed someone who knew this battlefield better than my current lawyer. Someone who'd seen these tactics before and knew how to counter them without bleeding me dry. That's when I remembered my old college contacts list, buried in a desk drawer. Back when I was pre-law before switching to business, I'd kept track of everyone who went on to pass the bar. Most of them were corporate lawyers now, but one name made me pause. David Morrison. We'd been close once. Shared an apartment junior and senior year. Stayed in touch through law school. He'd specialized in family law, made a name for himself handling tough custody cases. But we drifted apart years ago after, well, that's another story. The cursor blinked over his number like a challenge. Pride's a funny thing. Sometimes it costs more than money to ask for help, especially from someone you've avoided for nearly a decade. I glanced at that hold note again. Then at Ethan's latest school photo on my desk. He had my smile in that picture, but his eyes looked tired. Too tired for a 9-year-old. My finger hovered over David's number in my phone. Sometimes the hardest calls are the ones we know we have to make. The Colonial Diner hadn't changed since my college days. Same faded red booths, same coffee-stained menus, same lazy ceiling fan spinning above the counter. I'd picked it because it was quiet, but seeing David walk in, I realized part of me had chosen it for the familiar ground. 10 years had silvered his temples, but he still moved with that lawyer's confidence I remembered from our student days. Legal pad tucked under one arm, reading glasses hanging from his collar, some habits stick. Mike, he said, sliding into the booth. No handshake, no awkward dance around the past. Just that steady look that used to calm me before finals. You know that feeling when you're carrying something heavy and someone finally helps take the weight? That's what it felt like watching him open that yellow pad and uncap his pen. Start from the beginning, he said. Everything. So I did. Pulled out my phone and showed him the photos first. Ethan's bruises. The doctor's reports. The text exchanges with Melissa. Showed him the suspicious clinic receipts. The school records. Everything I'd gathered. David just nodded, taking notes in that precise handwriting of his, letting me get it all out. How are you holding up? He asked when I finished. Not asking about the case, asking about me. Running on fumes, I admitted. Financially and... I gestured vaguely at my head. He set his pen down. Here's what we're going to do. The plan he laid out was surgical. No more emotional appeals, no more reactive responses to Melissa's provocations. Everything would go through proper channels, documented and time-stamped. We'll bring in a neutral child psychologist, he said, sketching a timeline on his pad. Get Ethan's statement recorded properly. Then we'll subpoena the real clinic records, not these convenient printouts Melissa provided. My coffee had gone cold, but I barely noticed. For the first time in weeks, fog was lifting. The judge's final custody review is in 30 days, David continued. That's our window. Between now and then, we build our case brick by brick. No rushed motions, no desperate plays. Let the evidence speak. He tapped his pen on the table. And Mike, I need you to stop responding to her texts about anything except basic logistics. No debates, no defenses. Let her throw her punches at air. What about her boyfriend? I asked. The one who... We'll get to him, David cut in. But first, I need you to get me something specific. Bank statements showing your child support payments. Also, I want billing records from that clinic she claims Ethan visited, and a complete log of Melissa's communication history with the school. He slid the legal pad over, pointing to a list he'd made. These are the documents we need. Some we can subpoena, others you'll have to track down. But this is your playbook for the next month. 30 days. It felt both too long and too short. When I got home, I marked the review date on my kitchen calendar in bright red. Ethan was at his desk, working on math homework. Hey buddy, I said, resting a hand on his shoulder. 30 days, that's all we need to hold on for. Until then, we keep things normal. School, baseball, everything just like always. He nodded, and for the first time in weeks, I saw his shoulders relax a little. That night, standing at my bedroom window, I took a deep breath. The air didn't taste like metal anymore. You know that bitter tang fear leaves in your mouth? Instead, it just felt clean. Clear. The plan was in motion. The clock was ticking. And this time, I wasn't fighting alone. The manila envelope landed on my desk like a bomb. Court filing stamps, fresh ink. You know that sinking feeling when you see official letterhead? My hands weren't quite steady as I pulled out the papers. Motion to restrict overnight visitation, blazed across the top in bold type. Below it, Melissa's latest attack unfolded in careful legalese, painting me as some kind of obsessive coach pushing Ethan to exhaustion. She'd twisted every practice, every game into something sinister. According to her filing, I was endangering the minor child through excessive athletic intensity and creating undue stress through rigid practice schedules. She'd even included photos of Ethan looking tired after games. Normal kid stuff twisted into evidence. You ever have one of those moments where anger burns so hot it circles right back around to cold? That's where I landed, reading her demands for supervised visits only. No overnights until a full review of coaching practices could be conducted. I had David's number dialed before I finished the last page. He picked up on the second ring. She's trying to limit my time with Ethan, I said, keeping my voice level. Claims I'm pushing him too hard at baseball. Send me the filing, David replied, all business. Then call Tommy. He's still your assistant coach, right? Yeah, going on 3 seasons now. Good. We need an affidavit from him about your coaching style. Practice logs too. Attendance records, workout plans, everything. I want documented proof of proper warm-ups and cool-downs. I could hear him typing as he talked. Get me statements from other parents if you can. Focus on safety protocols, water breaks, the whole routine. No emotional language, just facts. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with Tommy, watching him read through his statement one last time before signing. The smell of marker ink from the practice schedules spread out between us, brought back that first season. Ethan so small in his oversized jersey. Me learning to balance drills with fun. This is solid, Tommy said, pushing the papers back. Dates, times, signatures from 3 other parents. She's crazy if she thinks anyone will buy you're too hard on. These kids. I nodded, but my mind was already mapping out the next week. Every homework assignment would be completed and logged. Dinners would be balanced and on time. Bedtime would run like clockwork. If Melissa wanted to put my parenting under a microscope, I'd give her nothing but precision to look at. Later that night, I stood in Ethan's doorway, watching him sleep. His baseball mitt sat on the nightstand where he always kept it, ready for morning catch practice. Looking at him there, peaceful despite everything, I felt that cold anger crystallize into something harder. Something that could file motions and track times and build walls with paperwork. How's our response looking? I asked David the next morning, phone pressed between ear and shoulder as I sorted through documents. Clean, he said. No adjectives, no accusations. Just dates, times, and signed statements. We're not arguing with her narrative. We're drowning it in documented facts. I spread our counterfiling across my desk. Practice schedules with parent signatures, medical clearance forms, photos from team celebrations. 3 seasons of proper coaching condensed into exhibits and affidavits. This goes in first thing tomorrow? I asked. 8 a.m. sharp, David confirmed. Wear your suit, the gray one, not the blue. Looking professional matters. That night, I laid out my clothes. Pressed gray suit, white shirt, striped tie. The courthouse would open at 7:30. I'd be there at 7:15, papers organized in my briefcase, ready to file our response the moment doors opened. Standing at my closet, I pictured those heavy wooden doors, imagining what waited behind them. Would Melissa be there? Would she have another surprise motion ready? The questions circled like moths around a porch light, but I forced them away. Tomorrow would come soon enough. I walked back to Ethan's room one last time before bed. He was reading, propped up on pillows, baseball cards scattered across his comforter. Dad? He looked up. Are you going to court tomorrow? Just filing some papers, buddy. Nothing to worry about. He nodded, sorting through his cards. Mom says I might not be able to stay over anymore. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. That's what these papers are for. To make sure that doesn't happen. The next morning, I met David at his office before sunrise. He'd cleared his conference room table, spreading out color-coded folders like a general plotting campaign moves. Here's our battle plan, he said, tapping a yellow legal pad. We're going through every document Melissa submitted, line by line. I want originals where possible, certified copies where not, and everything gets verified by someone who isn't us. You know that feeling when you're watching game film and suddenly spot the other team's tell? That's how David worked. Methodical, patient, looking for the patterns that shouldn't be there. We started with the clinic records. I'd gotten used to the sight of them. The bruise photos, the examination notes, the diagnosis codes, but David saw things I'd missed. Look here, he said, pointing to a doctor's signature. Dr. Sarah Chen on page 1. Dr. S. Chen on page 3. Sarah C. on the referral form. His finger traced each variation. Medical professionals don't play name roulette on official documents. I leaned in closer. Could be different doctors? Same patient, same visit, same timestamp. David shook his head. And see these reference numbers at the top? They should run in sequence. These skip around like lottery picks. We spent hours processing David's discovery list. Each item needed multiple verifications, notarized releases, certified mail receipts, third-party confirmations. By noon, my hand cramped from signing forms. Ever notice how clean these PDFs are? David asked, squinting at his screen. Medical records usually have artifacts. Highlighting, stamps, hand notes. These look sanitized. He requested native copies from the clinic. The original. Digital files, not just scans. What came back raised more red flags. The compression patterns were wrong, like someone had copied and pasted pieces together. Documents don't naturally fragment like this, David muttered, circling another anomaly. Something in these reports will not survive daylight. You've probably had that moment when you know you're onto something but can't quite name it yet. That's where we were, circling a truth that kept shifting shape. I printed fresh copies of everything, organizing them in a binder with tabbed sections and a summary index for the judge. Each tab told part of the story. Inconsistent signatures, mismatched dates, reference numbers that defied logic. David worked his contacts at the medical records department, asking careful questions about their filing system. I could feel him building a foundation, brick by brick, that would support whatever he was hunting. The deadline clock ticked louder each day. 1 week melted into the next. I'd catch myself staring at calendar squares, willing them to slow down. Ethan asked fewer questions now, but his eyes followed me when I checked my phone for updates. We reconvene Friday, David said as we wrapped another late session. By then, I'll know which exhibits to lead with. I nodded, gathering my files. The conference room had become a second home. Coffee rings marked case law books, takeout containers tucked in corners. Sometimes I felt like we were the only 2 people awake in the whole city, piecing together this puzzle in the quiet hours. That night, I was reviewing our progress notes when my phone buzzed. David's message lit up the screen. I think I found it. Just 5 words, but they hit like a fastball to the chest. I sat there in my kitchen, staring at that text, thinking about all the late nights and dead ends that led to this moment. Tomorrow would bring answers. For now, I had a message that felt like the first ray of dawn after a long night of extra innings. The next morning hit different. You know that energy before a championship game? When you can feel electricity running through your cleats? That's how it felt walking into David's conference room at dawn. He had 3 laptops open, spreadsheets everywhere, and a look I hadn't seen before, like a pitcher who'd just figured out the batter's weakness. "Sit down, Michael," he said, sliding a fresh coffee my way. "Remember how we requested those bank records?" I nodded, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. The familiar scent of coffee and paper filled the room, reminding me of early mornings prepping lineup cards. "Watch this." David pulled up a spreadsheet tracking my child support payments. Every month, like clockwork, your deposits hit Melissa's account. But look what happens 3 days later. He highlighted a series of withdrawals. Large chunks of money, moving out like clockwork. "Now, check these dates against her social media." He flipped to another screen showing Melissa's posts. Cabo, Bermuda, the Bahamas. Look at the timestamps. My throat tightened as the pattern emerged. Those getaways she'd mentioned, they lined up perfectly with the withdrawals. Money meant for Ethan's care was funding beach cocktails and resort stays. "That's not all," David continued, pulling out a stack of papers. "Remember those clinic receipts? The ones supposedly proving Ethan's soccer injuries? He laid them side by side with other patient records. Even I could see it now. Identical formatting, same font glitches, even the same authentic stamp placement. She used the same template," David explained. "Just changed the names and dates. Problem is, real medical records don't look this clean. They've got different headers, varying stamps, unique reference numbers. These?" He tapped the papers. "These are Xerox art." I felt my hands steady for the first time in weeks. "What's this mean legally?" "It means we're not arguing custody anymore." David's voice had an edge I hadn't heard before. "This is fraud. Pattern and practice of deception. We've got her using child support for personal luxury while fabricating medical records to cover abuse. That's criminal territory. You ever see a pitch so perfect, you know it's a game changer before it crosses the plate? That's what this felt like." David drafted a motion to supplement our exhibits, then pulled up an email. "Notice to opposing counsel for sanctions. They'll get this in about..." He clicked send. Now, we spent the next hours building our presentation. Everything needed to be crystal clear for the judge. Numbered tabs, color-coded sections, a one-page roadmap laying out the fraud scheme. "Timeline here," David pointed. "Bank records here, social media corroboration here, template evidence here. Make it so simple, the judge can't miss it." I helped arrange the exhibits, my coach's brain kicking in. Like designing a perfect practice drill. Every movement planned, every step purposeful. The wall calendar caught my eye. 5 days until final custody review. 5 days until we stepped into that courtroom with our evidence bomb. "One last thing," David said, handing me a steel briefcase. "Keep the originals in here. Lock it up tonight." I clicked the case shut, feeling its weight. 5 years of coaching had taught me about pressure moments. This was the bottom of the ninth, bases loaded kind of pressure. Standing in the doorway, I flipped the conference room lights off. The case felt heavy in my hand, but my steps were light. 5 days. The courtroom air was already in my lungs. For the first time since this started, I didn't feel like I was playing defense anymore. We had the ball, and the end zone was in sight. 5 days. The thought beat like a drum in my chest as I headed home. You know that moment before a storm breaks? When the air gets thick and every sound feels like it's wrapped in cotton. That's what the courtroom felt like that morning. David and I took our seats, binders stacked neat and organized. I'd polished my dress shoes the night before. Funny how old habits kick in when you're nervous. The leather smell mixed with the courtroom's wood polish took me right back to my own father's advice. Show up clean, show up early, let your work speak. Melissa sat across the aisle with her attorney, a sharp-suited woman who'd been sending aggressive emails for weeks. I tried to catch Melissa's eye, but she kept her gaze locked on her phone. Same move she'd pulled when Ethan needed her most. "All rise," the bailiff called. The judge entered. Older woman, silver-rimmed glasses, the kind of presence that made everyone sit up straighter. She'd been patient through previous hearings, but today her eyes had a different focus. "Counsel," she nodded. "I understand we have new evidence to review?" David stood, smooth as if he were in his own living room. "Yes, Your Honor. If I may approach?" He carried our primary exhibit binder to the bench. I'd helped him arrange it last night. Clean tabs, clear summaries, a story told in black and white. "Your Honor," David began, "this is fundamentally a case about truth and documentation. May I walk you through an audit trail? The judge nodded, and David started his timeline. Every deposit I'd made for child support, tracked with bank timestamps. Then the withdrawals. Each one matched to a luxury charge. He pulled up travel confirmations, resort bookings, flight upgrades, spa packages. Note the dates, Your Honor, David said. 3 days after each support payment. Consistent pattern of personal expenditure. I watched the judge's eyebrows lift as she followed the money trail. Her pen moved steadily, taking notes. Then David shifted to the clinic records. Regarding the alleged soccer injuries, we've discovered concerning inconsistencies. He pulled out the template comparisons we'd found. These receipts share identical formatting errors across supposedly different dates and patients. Melissa's attorney stood up. Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is editorializing. Overruled. The judge replied without looking up. But Mr. Harrison, stick to facts, not characterizations. Yes, Your Honor. David nodded. The metadata from these documents shows creation dates that don't match the alleged treatment dates. Furthermore, he laid out the technical evidence like he was assembling a puzzle. Each piece clicked into place. The duplicate stamp patterns, the mismatched fonts, the impossible reference numbers. I glanced at Melissa. Her jaw was working back and forth, that same tension I'd seen when she was cornered during our marriage. Her attorney kept scribbling notes, but her shoulders had that defeated slope. David called our expert witness, the neutral doctor who'd examined Ethan's injuries. She took the stand, professional and direct. Doctor, David asked, based on your examination and the photographic evidence, can you confirm the age of the injuries? Yes, she replied. The bruising patterns and coloration are consistent with the timestamps on the photographs. They could not have occurred during the earlier dates claimed in these clinic documents. The word fabricated appeared in the court reporter's transcript. I watched Melissa flinch. David wrapped up his presentation with a simple summary. No dramatic flourishes, just facts laid out in sequence. The judge followed every word, occasionally asking for clarification on specific exhibits. When he finished, the courtroom fell silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy. The judge removed her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose. I need time to review these materials thoroughly. She looked at both tables. We'll take a 1-hour recess. When we return, be prepared for my findings. The gavel crack echoed as she stood. Everyone rose, watching her disappear into chambers. I sat there, breath caught somewhere between my throat and chest, feeling the weight of that closing door. David squeezed my shoulder once. Our signal that everything was proceeding as planned. The next 60 minutes stretched out before us like a year. When the bailiff called us back in, my legs felt wooden. You know that moment before a storm breaks? That's what the air felt like. Charged, waiting. David and I took our seats. He adjusted his tie once, the only tell I'd ever seen him show. Across the aisle, Melissa's attorney shuffled papers without really moving them. The judge entered, still holding our exhibit binder. She settled into her chair and looked at all of us over those silver frames. I've reviewed the evidence thoroughly, she began. This case presents clear documentation of conduct that cannot be reconciled with the best interests of the minor child. My heart picked up speed, but David's steady presence kept me anchored. The court finds the following, she continued, her tone cutting through the whispers that had started in the gallery. First, regarding the allegations of physical discipline. The medical evidence and time-stamped photographs establish a pattern of concerning injuries inconsistent with normal childhood activities. More troubling is the attempted concealment through falsified medical records. She lifted one of the clinic documents we'd analyzed. The manipulation of these records demonstrates a deliberate effort to mislead the court. This behavior alone would justify a modification of custody. However, she paused, and I swear you could hear everyone holding their breath. The financial evidence is equally disturbing. Ms. Durant has systematically diverted child support funds for personal luxury expenses, documented through bank records and travel confirmations. This misuse of resources intended for the child's benefit represents a serious breach of parental duty. Melissa shifted in her chair. I remembered that restless movement from our marriage. It always came right before she'd try to flip the script, but the judge wasn't finished. Therefore, this court finds Ms. Durant unfit for shared custody at this time. Full physical and legal custody is hereby granted to Michael Carver, effective immediately. The gallery erupted in murmurs. Someone behind me whispered, "Jesus." I felt David's hand press my arm once, steady. Furthermore, the judge continued, raising her voice slightly, Ms. Durant is ordered to repay all misappropriated support funds, totaling $47,830 within 90 days. Future modification requests will require completion of parenting classes and independent financial audits showing rehabilitation. She looked directly at Melissa. The court takes these measures not as punishment, but to protect the child and ensure resources intended for his care are properly utilized. The gavel crack felt like thunder breaking that charged air. We're adjourned. Melissa was up and moving before the echo faded. Her heels clicked sharp and fast toward the door. Through the courthouse windows, I could see news cameras already gathering on the steps. Word travels fast in custody cases, especially when money's involved. I turned to David, trying to find words big enough. He just smiled and shook my hand. "Go home," he said. "Be with your boy." My phone felt warm in my pocket as I typed out a quick message to Ethan. "Pizza at Tony's tonight, buddy. The good stuff." I added a baseball emoji, our private signal that everything was okay. Walking out those heavy doors felt like emerging from underwater. The evening air didn't press against my ribs anymore. You know that feeling when you've been carrying something so long you forget its weight until it's gone? Like that. I took the long way home, driving past the baseball diamond where I'd coached Ethan's first t-ball game. The sky stretched out clean and wide above it. Just weather now, not some kind of omen I had to decode. When I got home, I headed straight for Ethan's room and pulled out his jersey for tomorrow's game. The white fabric felt cool and fresh as I laid it out, smooth and ready. Those bold number 7s on the back looked like they were standing taller somehow. Someone once told me justice moves slow, but arrives exactly on time. Looking at that clean jersey waiting for my boy, I finally understood what they meant. Saturday morning rolled in with that special kind of quiet you get after a storm passes. When everything feels washed clean and the air itself seems lighter. You know what I mean? I pulled into the baseball field parking lot early, like always. Force of habit from years of coaching, I guess. The familiar crunch of gravel under my tires felt different somehow. Better. My phone buzzed again. Probably the 10th time since breakfast. The local news had picked up the story, and Melissa's carefully crafted image was crumbling faster than a sandcastle at high tide. Headlines splashed across my screen. Local mother falsified records in custody battle. Child support funds traced to luxury vacations. I switched the phone to silent and tucked it away. Some victories don't need a play-by-play. From the car, I watched Ethan jogging across the outfield to join his teammates for warm-ups. That white jersey caught the morning light, crisp and clean against the green grass. No more careful adjustments, no wincing when his teammates gave him friendly shoulder bumps. Just a kid, free and easy, exactly like it should be. Remember when you were young and summer mornings at the ball field felt like they could stretch out forever? That's what I saw in Ethan's face right then. Pure, uncomplicated joy. I grabbed my coaching bag and headed toward the field, nodding to parents settling into their usual spots in the bleachers. The whispers followed me. Not the worried kind from before, but the sort that carried understanding and something like respect. Word travels fast in small towns, especially when justice finally catches up to someone who thought they were above it. David waved from his spot in the stands, coffee cup in hand. He'd never much cared for baseball before, but here he was, showing up like family does. I gave him a quick salute. Some debts you can never really repay, but that's not why real friends help anyway. The pitcher's mound dirt felt solid under my feet as I started setting up for pre-game practice. Funny how the same space can feel so different when you're not carrying the weight of worry anymore. Our house had felt like that this morning too. Lighter. Like fear had packed its bags and taken all that heavy air with it. A burst of laughter pulled my attention to the dugout. Ethan was there with his teammates, sharing some joke that had them all cracking up. His shoulders were relaxed, his whole body moving with that natural confidence kids have when they feel safe. No more of that careful way he used to hold himself, like he was trying to take up less space in the world. You want to know something about karma? It's not always quick, but it sure is thorough. Melissa had lost more than just legal authority over Ethan. Every fabricated document, every misused dollar had carved away at her carefully maintained social standing. The same country club friends who used to laugh at her jokes were now quietly unfriending her on social media. Those emergency shopping trips and spa weekends had a different look now that everyone knew where the money came from. But standing there on that mound, watching my son's clean white jersey glow under the climbing sun, I didn't feel any satisfaction in her fall. Just relief. Pure, bone-deep relief that Ethan would never again have to hide bruises under his uniform or make up stories about accidents. The bleachers filled up as game time approached. Parents settled in with their camping chairs and coolers, the familiar pre-game buzz building in the air. Ethan jogged out to his position, glove ready, stride easy and loose. His eyes were bright when he looked over at me, giving that little nod we'd always shared before games. Right then, watching him take his place on that field, shoulders straight and head high, I knew this image would stay with me forever. My boy in his clean white jersey, finally just being a kid playing the game he loved. I closed my fingers around the baseball in my pocket, feeling its familiar stitches. A father's duty is never negotiable. Simple as that.